Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. We're talking royalty, crowns, castles, thrones, but not the kind from fantasy shows or bedtime fairy tales. No golden glow, no magical snowfall, and definitely no radiant queen sipping mulled wine beside a roaring hearth. Tonight, we're crawling under the damp, musty sheets of medieval royal bedrooms. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the kind of content that helps you drift into sleep while imagining the cold, uncomfortable past. And let me know in the comments what time it is where you're tuning in from. It's always fascinating to see who's watching this from across the globe. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's slip together into tonight's story, tonight's journey. Where did kings and queens sleep in medieval castles? During freezing winters, you'd think a king had it easy, didn't you? A plush bed, silk sheets, roaring fires, and servants warming his slippers. And sure, that's what the paintings would have you believe. The truth, however, is far more drafty. Medieval castles were marvels of defense. Stone fortresses built for war, not for warmth. The thicker the wall, the colder the touch. Grand, yes. Impressive, yes. But inside those towers and halls, winter didn't knock politely. It barged in uninvited and stayed for months. And it didn't matter if you were a queen with 1,000 tapestries or a prince wrapped in fox furs. Cold is the great equalizer. It gets into your bones no matter how blue your blood is. So tonight you're not just watching history, you're slipping into it. You're waking up as a royal in the dead of winter, surrounded by stone, shivering through a world of crackling fires, woolen nightcaps, and strange medieval rituals that were more about survival than comfort. We're going to explore everything: what the royal bedroom looked like, how beds were constructed, what people wore to bed, how they kept warm or didn't, and why even kings sometimes woke up with frost on their blankets. This won't be a tale of dragons or enchantments. This is the history they don't teach you in school. The uncomfortable, itchy, smoky, sleepless truth of sleeping in a medieval castle. You're about to curl up next to royalty, but don't expect luxury. Expect lice stone walls, furs that smell like wet dog, and fires that never seem to reach your toes. So pull your covers up, pretend your sheets aren't made of scratchy wool, and get ready to slip into a night long, long ago. Do you want me to continue? You are Mom are the king, or perhaps the queen, and you've just opened your eyes, not to birdsong, not to sunlight, but to breath. Cold breath. Your own. Hanging in the air like smoke. It's so cold you can see it. You exhale again, there it is curling upward into the gray shadows of your own royal bedchamber. Except, chamber feels generous. This room is not cozy. It's a cavern. Stone walls, stone floor, stone ceiling that echoes every creak of the wooden beams above you. And stone, as you are quickly realizing, has no sympathy for bare skin in the dead of winter. You shift beneath the covers, slowly, carefully, because your limbs are stiff. Your joints ache from the cold, and the woolen blanket draped over you feels like someone repurposed an old rug from the stable. Thick, yes. Heavy, certainly, but scratchy like sleeping under an angry sheep. The mattress isn't what you'd call plush either. It's stuffed with straw. Good, honest straw and perhaps some feathers if your servants remembered to shake them in. But over time it's compacted unevenly. Lumpy. Crunchy in places. You don't trust that sound. You try not to think about the fact that straw makes a lovely home for things that bite. Lice, fleas, mites. Royal blood does not protect you from the tiny tyrants of medieval bedding. Still, you remain in bed, because getting out means facing the worst of it. The floor. Your feet ache just thinking about it. Even with fur slippers which someone forgot to leave by the bedside again, you know what awaits. The stones are freezing. Not cold, not brisk. Freezing. As in touch them with bare skin, and your body will scream back in protest. These floors could hold the memory of winter for months. If hell is fire, then the medieval castle in January is its icy twin. The room is large, too large. Royal chambers are supposed to be impressive after all, but that size works against you. It means the fire in the hearth, a modest blaze of orange tucked into the corner of the room, cannot reach you. Not really. It crackles with the enthusiasm of a bored jester doing its best, but the heat dies in the air long before it reaches your bed. And that fire. It's fueled by logs dragged up from the woods days ago. They're damp, they sputter, they smoke. And the chimney, oh, the chimney is medieval, which means the smoke might rise or it might decide to linger. Sometimes your chamber smells less like royal perfume and more like burnt stew and wet dog fur. You blink again. The light is dim, not sunlight, no. The narrow windows are glazed with horn, not glass. Thin, scraped, translucent slices of animal horn oiled just enough to let a faint glow in. The result. The world outside looks like a blurry painting someone left out in the rain. There are no curtains to pull back, no electric switch to flick. If you want real light, someone has to carry it in. A candle, a torch, maybe a blazing rushlight made of animal fat that drips and stinks and flickers more than it glows. The only sounds in the chamber are distant. The wind outside howling like a lonely wolf. The clatter of servants' feet down in the halls below. Somewhere the drawbridge creaks as it settles. And in the corner near the fire, the old hunting hound snores, his ribs rising and falling, his breath steady and steaming, like a miniature dragon. You roll onto your side and the mattress groans. Not a squeak, but a deep, tired groan, the sound of wood straining after years of royal weight and restless sleep. The bed itself is a four-poster, grand. Carved oak, maybe elm. Heavy curtains hang from the frame, velvet perhaps, or wool pulled tight to hold in the little warmth your body produces. But in reality, they just trap the cold with you, like being sealed into your own private icebox. And yes, there's a nightcap on your head, a long, ridiculous hat, made of wool or linen, drooping off to one side. Not for fashion, no. This isn't a Christmas card, but to keep your head from freezing. The stone walls suck warmth from your scalp like a vampire. Without the cap, and you might wake up with icicles for thoughts. Your body is wrapped in layers. You slept in your chemise, a long tunic, and maybe even a second overgown. Royal or not, you do not sleep nude in winter. That's the kind of mistake you only make once. Beside the bed, a small table holds your chamber pot, a ceramic bowl that has seen too many winters and not enough scrubbing. Yes, royalty or not, there is no indoor plumbing. If nature calls, that pot is your only friend in the dark hours before dawn. And if it's too full, well, that's someone else's problem. Probably a servant named Thomas who already resents you. The cold creeps under the door, through the cracks in the wall, through every inch of this mighty stone fortress that is utterly, entirely defenseless against a northern wind. You don't want to get up. You really don't. Because leaving the bed means shivering into a stiff robe, stepping onto ice-cold flagstones, and beginning another day as a monarch in a castle that remembers war better than it remembers warmth. But the bell tolls from the chapel tower. 7 rings. Morning prayers. You sigh. Deeply. Resigned. Regal. Miserable. This is what it means to wake up as a king or a queen in a time when power meant castles and castles meant cold. The fire has dimmed. The hound is still snoring. But your day, noble though you are, has begun. The royal chamber is just as cold as when you opened your eyes. Maybe colder. The air smells of damp wool, charred ash, and something faintly fungal that you hope is just your slippers. You sit up slowly, layers of heavy fabric clinging to you like frozen seaweed. Outside your bed, curtains your royal attendants are waiting. No, not with breakfast in bed. That would be far too modern. They're here for the ceremony. Because even in winter, especially in winter, a royal must be dressed. And this is not a task you're trusted to do alone. One servant opens the bed curtains with frozen fingers. Another brings a bowl of lukewarm water, not steaming, mind you, just barely above miserable. This is your wash water for the morning. It's been heated in a copper pot downstairs, sloshed up the stone stairs in haste, and arrived just in time to lose its warmth to the castle air. They offer it with a cloth rough linen, not exactly the softest welcome to your skin. There's no soap in the modern sense. You might be lucky enough to have a bit of lye soap tucked away somewhere, but mostly it's cold water, stiff cloth, and vague optimism. You dab at your face, behind the ears, neck, hands. It's not about getting clean, not really. It's about being clean enough, because bathing the full body kind is rare. In winter, rarer still. Some believe washing too much opens the pores to sickness. Others just don't have the time, the water, or the sheer willpower to strip down in a room barely warmer than the grave. You sniff once, deeply. That's manageable. Your hair is brushed next, a slow, methodical process performed by someone else, usually while your scalp winces under the stiff boar bristle brush. You haven't washed your hair in weeks, maybe longer. It's been combed, powdered with herbs or rosemary water, and occasionally scraped with a knife to remove buildup. Yes, scraped. You wear it up braided or tucked beneath a coif or linen cap. If you're a king, your hair is shorter, but your beard needs tending. A royal beard must be brushed, oiled, and inspected for fleas discreetly, of course. Now teeth, or rather what passes for dental hygiene. There are no toothbrushes, no minty toothpaste. A servant hands you a bundle of twigs, birch or hazel frayed at the ends. You chew it to soften the fibers, then rub it across your teeth and gums. Maybe you rinse with wine vinegar or cold water mixed with salt and crushed sage. Your breath will not be fresh, not really, but it won't knock anyone unconscious. And in the medieval court, that's a win. Once cleanish, you're helped into your first layer of clothing. A linen undershirt, maybe 2, still chilled from the air. It clings to you like a damp leaf. Then come the hose woolen leg coverings that are tighter than you'd like. They're held up with garters knotted tightly. You shift awkwardly. The fabric never quite sits right. Then come the outer garments. A thick wool tunic or gown, most belted at the waist. Velvet if you're lucky. Embroidered if you're important. Lined with fur if someone remembered your status this week. And over it all a heavy cloak, fur-trimmed, fastened with a brooch. It smells faintly of fireplace candle wax and something distinctly rodent-like. You step into soft leather shoes, indoor shoes, or felted boots with wooden soles. These are not comfortable. They are at best functional. And now that you're bundled in more layers than a winter onion, it's time for the most disappointing moment of any royal morning breakfast. Forget feasting. This is not a banquet. This is breaking the fast, a modest, forgettable ritual designed more to keep your stomach from howling during Mass than to inspire joy. You're led to a small side chamber. Not the great hall, not yet. Just a little antechamber with a low fire and a wooden table. A servant places a trencher, a flat piece of yesterday's bread in front of you. This is your plate. On it, a small slice of cold meat from last night's supper, likely dried, salted, or smoked. Maybe some congealed goose fat. Maybe a wedge of cheese that squeaks when you cut into it. And beside it, a goblet of, not water. Water is for bathing horses and spreading disease. You drink ale, or watered-down wine. If you're particularly lucky, there's pottage, a mushy, lukewarm mix of grains, root vegetables, and regret. It's been reheated from last night's leftovers and bears a strong resemblance to medieval wall plaster, both in taste and consistency. You chew in silence. The food is bland, or worse, sour. But it fills your stomach, and in winter, that's all that matters. Your hands still bearing the scent of vinegar and wool wipe clean on a cloth. Not napkins, just another square of linen. Your nails are trimmed once a week, assuming someone remembers. If you're a queen, your hands are inspected daily. Clean hands are a symbol of purity. Dirty hands are a topic for gossip. And yes, as you eat, you're watched. Always watched. Not out of suspicion, but tradition. Royalty doesn't dine alone. Even a simple breakfast is a kind of performance, quiet, slow, restrained. Each bite chewed with the dignity of a monarch who wishes they were anywhere else. A servant pours more wine. You decline. It's too early for pretending. Someone brings a warm cloth for your hands warmed over coals in the kitchen, then hurried up the stairs so quickly it's still steaming. You press it to your cheeks, briefly. You remember warmth, vaguely. Then the cloth is taken, the chair pushed back, the door opened. Time for Mass, time for council, time for the endless politics of the court. You rise. Slowly. The cloak weighs you down. The cold seeps through the layers, and your stomach is full of cheese, barley, and fatigue. But you're the king, or the queen, and your day has begun, whether you like it or not. Let's start with your clothes. Not the kind you wear for feasts or battles or weddings. The kind you wear every day. The ones that scratch, sag, stink, and if you're lucky, don't fall apart before spring. You're royalty, yes. But even royal robes can't save you from medieval reality. Your base layer is linen, always linen. It's the closest thing medieval Europe has to comfort. A long shirt or shift worn under everything else. In theory, it's changed regularly. In practice, it's changed when the stains begin to tell stories. And linen, for all its breathability, does not hold warmth. So you layer. You pile on woolen hose stitched by hand, never quite symmetrical. Your legs itch constantly. Then a tunic or a gown, heavy, long, and draped with dignity. And over that, another. A surcoat, an overgown, a mantle. Every layer traps a little more body heat. Every layer also traps everything else, sweat, smoke, and the general stench of castle life. Your shoes, if you're indoors, they're soft leather. Slippers in theory, but the soles are thin. The seams are loose, and one unexpected puddle of spilled rushlight fat turns them into soggy regret. Outdoors, you wear pointed shoes made of stiffer leather. They buckle, crack, and warp. There's no tread, no insulation. Snow is a cruel prank that gets between your toes and freezes your nobility one footstep at a time. Gloves, rarely. Mittens, only if you're fortunate enough to have a furrier in court. Most warmth comes from wrapping your arms in layers of cloak and praying your fingers don't turn blue before the first meeting of the day ends. And then there's the crown, or the circlet, or the veil and coif if you're a queen. They aren't just symbols, they're burdens. Heavy, itchy, and freezing cold when first put on in the morning. Metal absorbs cold. So every time a jeweled diadem touches your temple, you flinch just slightly, pretending it's reverence, not brain freeze. But clothes are only part of the picture. You're not just wrapped in fabric. You're wrapped in stone. Let's talk shelter. Let's talk castle. From the outside, it's impressive, massive, towering, gray, a symbol of strength, dominance, and strategic engineering. From the inside, it's a stone refrigerator with carpets. The walls are thick. That's good in a siege. That's bad when you're trying to stay warm. Stone doesn't heat up. It stores the cold. It holds on to it like a miser with his last coin. Even on a mild day, the inner walls feel clammy. In winter, they feel like death. The windows small, narrow slits in the walls called arrow loops, or if you're lucky, a handful of glazed panes made from oiled parchment or thin horn. Glass exists, but not for you, not in bulk. It's too expensive, too fragile, Saul. Too precious. The wind whistles in through every crack and sings you lullabies of frostbite and disappointment. Tapestries hang on the walls not for beauty, but for insulation. Huge embroidered scenes of battles and saints and hunting scenes. Not because you enjoy the aesthetics of a woolen boar chase, but because a triple-layered wall hanging might keep the wind from punching you directly in the spine. The floor. Cold. Always cold. Covered in rushes, reeds, or straw strewn across the stone in a thin, uneven layer. They absorb spills, they trap dust, they mask odors, and over time they rot. Beneath the top layer of fresh rushes lies a secret compost pile of old herbs, mouse droppings, and things no one has identified since All Saints' Day. Carpets rare, imported, often stolen from somewhere warmer. The nobility might have a rug or two, but they're used sparingly. They're not for comfort. They're for show. The idea of a plush wall-to-wall covering would have made a medieval queen cry tears of gratitude if she weren't too dehydrated from eating salted venison. And the ceiling. Oh, the ceiling. Vaulted beams of dark wood, echoing, uninsulated. Every cough whisper and creaking rafter becomes a part of your daily soundscape. In the summer, it's full of flies. In the winter, it's full of cold pockets that drop onto your head like invisible anvils. Your private chambers, the royal ones, are slightly better. A fire in the hearth, a curtain around your bed. But even then, there's no seal, no insulation, no modern heating. The warmth escapes faster than your trust in your cousin, who keeps eyeing your throne. Sometimes you'll find a brazier, a metal bowl filled with glowing coals in the corner. It provides warmth, yes. It also provides smoke. A lot of smoke. Your eyes water. Your lungs protest. But your toes are grateful. Ventilation. That's what the cracks in the walls are for. Your toilet. Let's not call it that. Let's call it what it is, a guardrobe. A narrow stone shaft built into the outer wall of the castle. You sit on a cold wooden seat, do your royal business, and it drops straight down, ideally into the moat. Realistically, into a growing pile that freezes in the winter and steams ominously in spring. You hold your breath, you say a prayer, and you hurry. During storms, the wind howls through the guardrobe like a ghost with indigestion. It lifts your tunic and your spirits in equal measure, mostly out of your body. And yet this is your sanctuary. The place where you sleep, eat, plan wars, host feasts, nurse illnesses, birth heirs, and occasionally, if you're lucky, laugh. It's dark, it's cold, it's damp, but it's yours. And despite the drafts and fleas and frostbitten feet, the castle holds a strange kind of comfort. Because this is where power lives, not in luxury, not in ease, but in endurance. So you pull your cloak tighter, you adjust the weight of your crown, and you walk down the corridor with stone echoing under your feet and smoke clinging to your hair. Because this isn't just clothing and shelter. This is how kings and queens survive winter, wrapped in wool, surrounded by stone, and warmed by the faint flickering hope that spring might come soon. You're not sipping wine. You're not petting peacocks. You're not reclining on silken cushions while bards serenade your noble toes. No. You are working. From the moment you woke up shivering beneath that itchy wool blanket, the royal schedule has been chasing you like a debt collector with a long memory. Because being a monarch in the Middle Ages wasn't a retirement plan, it was a full-time bone-grinding survival job. And winter, that's overtime. The moment your chamber door opens, they descend. Advisors, scribes, clerics, stewards, captains of the guard, cooks, chamberlains, messengers, bishops, and at least 3 people who aren't sure why they're there but feel very strongly about oaths. They bow. You nod. Then the flood begins. There are disputes about land. Always land. Someone's pig wandered into the wrong field. A baron wants more grain. A vassal claims another vassal looked at him disrespectfully during Mass, and now demands trial by combat. There's news from the northern border, vague, cold, and probably bad. And here's the thing, you can't ignore it. Every choice you make shapes your kingdom or ends it. Every nod of approval, every raised eyebrow, every single sentence is a form of labor. And it matters. One mistake, one delay, one ill-timed jest, and you've sparked a feud that ends in bloodshed. So you listen, carefully, with your stomach half full of cold cheese and barley mush, and your feet still frozen inside your boots. You sign documents, wax seals, you dictate letters to scribes who can barely keep up. Your handwriting is bad. No one dares say so. And then it's time to inspect the stores, the winter stores, down a drafty spiral staircase, into the underbelly of the castle, a world of barrels, sacks, hooks, and gloom. This is where your food is kept, assuming no rats mold or overly ambitious stewards got to it first. You check salted meats hanging like sad chandeliers from the rafters. You test dried fish. You tap barrels of ale and sniff wheels of cheese that may or may not be sentient. Everything is counted, weighed, estimated. Because if this food doesn't last until spring, neither will you or your court. A royal feast looks grand. But behind every roasted boar is a servant calculating just how many days of rations were burned in that single display of opulence. Grain, meat, wine, fish, dried fruit beans, nuts, onions, garlic. You ration them like gold. Not because you're poor, but because winter is greedy and the roads are closed. If a storm comes, no one's bringing more flour. Then there are the castles, not just yours, but the others under your control. Some crumbling, some under siege by time itself. Roof tiles need replacing. Walls need reinforcing. Fires need wood. Guards need paying. Horses need feeding. And speaking of horses, your stables are another job entirely. You don't ride for pleasure, not in winter. You ride because messages need delivering, borders need patrolling, and sometimes a powerful lord needs to be reminded that the king is not just a name on a scroll. But horses are expensive. They need hay shelter shoes and constant care. One bad infection, one slipped hoof on an icy path, and you've lost not just an animal, but transportation, prestige, and military strength. So you walk the stables, eyes scanning flanks, hooves, tails. You nod to the stablemaster. You try not to breathe too deeply. Royal or not, a stable in January smells like ambition and manure. You return to the castle just in time for another meeting. This one about taxes and food shortages, and the river that froze too early, cutting off the fishing village 3 leagues south. They've sent a plea for help, but your grain stores are low, and the bishop is reminding you that charity begins with piety, which is medieval code for "don't make me share." You smile, diplomatically, which takes effort because your jaw aches from clenching against the cold all morning. Then comes the part you dread: the people. No, not courtiers or knights. The actual people. The ones who live beyond the walls, who survive by weaving, herding, carving, and bleeding. They've come with petitions, begging for warmth, bread, justice. Some are dirty, most are desperate, all are cold. One has a child wrapped in rags, another is missing fingers, frostbite. A third speaks of wolves in the forest, too many this year, bolder, hungrier. They growl at doors now. You want to help, but helping takes resources. And every loaf given to a starving farmer is one less for your own soldiers. Every piece of firewood handed out means a draftier chamber for your children. And always you wonder, are they lying? You make the decisions anyway, quickly, publicly. Because a monarch who hesitates in public is a monarch remembered in rumors. Once the crowd is dismissed, you retreat. But there is no rest. The chapel bell tolls again. Time for midday prayer. And you haven't even begun to prepare for the inspection. Because once a week you tour the castle's defenses. Yes, even in winter. You climb the parapets, wind slicing through every seam of your cloak. You inspect arrow slits, murder holes, guard towers. You nod at the captain of the watch. He's lost 3 men this week to illness. One slipped on the icy wall walk and shattered his hip. Another collapsed from fever. The third simply vanished into the snow during latrine duty. You pretend it's fine, because you must. Because no one wants to follow a king who looks tired. But your feet are soaked. Your nose is running. Your fingers are stiff, and you haven't sat down in hours. Evening draws near, but the work continues. Letters must be read. Diplomats must be flattered. The queen wants an audience about the steward who insulted her embroidery choices. And a courtier insists that your cousin is plotting something again. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. While frost clings to the windows, while your castle groans under the weight of winter, while the wolves howl in the distance. Because this is survival, not in rags, not in fields, but in velvet and fur, in stone and silence. This is what it means to rule. A kingdom doesn't run on comfort. It runs on decisions, on exhaustion, on sleepless nights and frostbitten mornings, on walking the line between generosity and ruin, between mercy and strength. You are the monarch, and you do not rest, not while there's wood to count, wheat to weigh, wolves to outlast, and winter always winter. As the sun dips behind the trees and the long winter shadows stretch across the castle floor, something shifts in the air. It's quieter now, but not calmer. No, this is the hour when the flickering of candlelight begins to feel like eyes, when the fire in the hearth crackles like it's whispering something you don't want to understand. And this is when belief takes over. In the medieval world, there's no such thing as coincidence. No accidents, no randomness. Everything has meaning. Every cough, every birth, every spoiled sack of barley, every bad dream. You, a king or queen, might rule lands and people, but you do not rule fate. That belongs to someone else, or something else. Let's begin with God. He is watching, always. He knows what you think, what you do, what you say under your breath in the guardrobe. Your castle may be made of stone, but your soul, that's clay, and the church is here to shape it or break it. Every morning you pray, not out of habit, but out of necessity. Because sin isn't just an abstract thing. It's tangible. It's dangerous. Sin can make your children fall ill. It can ruin a harvest. It can invite famine, fire, plague, or worse, scandal. And the church knows this. So it watches you just as closely as God does. You have a private chapel in the castle. Of course you do. A small space with a wooden crucifix, an altar, and a priest whose face rarely moves. He serves Mass each morning, chants softly in Latin, and never quite blinks enough. He also listens to your confessions. Every sin, every impure thought, every moment of doubt. He writes nothing down but remembers everything. He is your spiritual guide and your political liability. Still you kneel, because no matter how powerful you are, death is coming. And when it does, you'd better have your soul dressed for the occasion. But God isn't your only concern. There are saints, dozens of them, hundreds if you count the obscure ones. You pray to them like insurance brokers. Saint Apollonia for toothaches, Saint Blaise for throat issues, Saint Leonard, if your cousin gets arrested for dueling in a cathedral again. And of course, Saint Christopher to protect you when traveling down frozen forest paths where bandits are as common as deer. Their icons line the chapel walls. Painted in gold faded from candle smoke, their eyes always slightly askew like they know more than they're saying. But even saints can't stop the superstitions. Your advisors don't call them that, of course. They call them precautions. You never leave your bed on the left side. That's the devil's path. You never sign a document at dusk. That's when spirits slip through. You wear a pouch of dried herbs sewn into your cloak, rosemary for protection, sage for wisdom, and wormwood, because someone's great-grandmother once said, it keeps witches away. You avoid certain doors after dark, because once long ago someone heard a baby crying behind them, but no baby lived in that part of the castle. You don't talk about that story anymore. Even the architecture obeys belief. The chapel faces east. The stairs spiral clockwise, so defenders coming up are disadvantaged, and perhaps so evil can't ascend easily. The castle walls are marked with strange little mason's symbols, crosses, X's, suns. Are they builder's marks or protective runes? It's best not to ask. Then there's the relic room. Tucked behind a reinforced door, it holds pieces of bone, supposedly saintly. A fragment of Saint Ursula's finger, a bit of the true cross. A vial of something that might be blood, might be rust, and might be both. These items are sacred, protected, revered, and more importantly, political. Every noble wants relics, because relics bring pilgrims. Pilgrims bring money, and money builds walls, But you're not always comforted by these relics, because sometimes when the wind howls at night and the fire guttering in the corner throws shadows like claws, you remember something else. The devil is real. Your priests say so. Your bishop says so. And your own dreams, full of black dogs and whispering children, seem to agree. Satan is not a metaphor in your world. He is a figure, a threat, a prowling presence. He might take the form of a storm that ruins your grain, or a fever that kills a child in one night, or a snake seen in the chapel garden on a Sunday morning. Witches, they exist too. Maybe not broom-flying, cauldron-stirring ones, but cunning women, herbalists, midwives who know too much. They walk between worlds. They might heal your wound. They might hex your marriage. And sometimes they're just widows who live alone and mutter too loudly during Mass. You don't know who they are until it's too late. Your queen once carried a charm in her sleeve. You pretended not to notice. It was stitched with red thread shaped like a little hand stuffed with dried lavender and bits of coral. It was meant to protect her from miscarrying again. The priest would not have approved, but neither did you remove it. Because when the stakes are high and the nights are long, you pray to everything: God, saints, stars, roots, stones. Faith becomes a net, a wall, a superstition-shaped shield against a world that does not care if you're royal. So you light a candle, or two, or seven, one for protection, one for good harvest, one for your enemies that they may fail, one for your children that they may survive, and the others just in case. Because belief isn't weakness in this world. Belief is armor. And when the wind screams and the chapel bell tolls a little too late and the dogs won't stop barking toward the dark forest beyond the walls, you pray harder. Not because you're certain, but because you can't afford not to be. The bells ring for supper. Not a gentle chime, a deep echoing clang that bounces down the stone halls and reminds everyone, noble and servant alike, that it's time to assemble. Not just to eat, but to perform. Because meals in a medieval castle aren't private affairs. They are ceremonies. Political theater wrapped in trenchers and soaked in weak wine. You enter the great hall. It's grand, yes, vaulted ceilings, long wooden beams, banners hanging in folds from the rafters. A fire blazes at one end. Not centrally, just near the dais where you'll sit. The rest of the hall remains aspirationally warm. The smells are familiar smoke meat, old ale, herbs, and people. The air is thick with them. No candles can clear it. Only time. Your seat is raised, of course. A throne-like chair at the high table. You and the queen or king, depending, sit above the rest. Not for comfort, for hierarchy. Your nobles, knights, stewards, and hangers-on sit in long rows below, jostling for proximity. Closer to the dais, better cuts of meat, more wine, warmer air. Farther away, tougher bread, colder broth, and a long cold walk to the latrines. You don't serve yourself. That would be madness. Trays are brought out by servants, wide, shallow dishes carried with urgency and prayers. The food is complicated, because royal food must be impressive. And yet, this is winter. So here's what you get. Bread. Hard, flat, dry. Cut into trenchers, edible plates. Baked days ago. Still better than nothing. Salted meat. Beef or pork boiled in spiced wine to soften the salt. A little gray around the edges. You pretend not to notice. Pottage. A thick, lumpy stew of barley, peas, onions, and yesterday. It's hot, at least. Fish, pickled herring, salt cod, smoked eel, cold, oily, and proof that God sometimes tests kings, too. Cheese. sharp, crumbly, slightly weeping from the corners, pungent enough to repel minor demons. Fruit. Dried figs or raisins a luxury this time of year. Not sweet. Just less dry than parchment. Ale. Flat. Cloudy. Safe. Wine. Watered down. Sour. But drinkable. Just. And then the centerpiece, the attempt at grandeur. A roast swan. Feathers reattached for display. Beak lacquered. Eyes glazed with something shiny and probably not food safe. It looks spectacular. It tastes like regret. You pick at it. Royalty does not devour. Royalty nibbles, nods, and pretends to savor. The court watches. Everything you eat, every bite you take, every moment you set down your goblet, it's being judged, whispered about, interpreted. If you ignore the pottage, the cook's brother-in-law will hear about it by morning. If you eat too quickly, someone will say you were drunk. If you eat too little, someone will say you're dying. So you eat with purpose, not hunger. And while you chew, entertainment arrives. The court fool tumbles into the hall, bells jingling, tunic flapping. He tells jokes about the bishop's gout, makes a duck impression, and mimics your steward's stutter. Everyone laughs a little too loudly, even the steward. Then come the musicians, a hurdy-gurdy, a rebec, a lute. The melodies echo in the hall like ghosts trying to cheer up. It's beautiful if slightly out of tune. It sounds better with ale. After that, a juggler, a fire eater, a man who claims to be part bear. You're not convinced. Sometimes there's a storyteller, usually an old man with 3 teeth and a voice like damp leather. He tells tales of Arthur or Roland or some long-dead prince who fought a dragon made of stars. You listen, politely, nobly, because this is how a medieval king or queen relaxes. By watching others work while you sit upright, smiling, chewing roasted goose liver beside someone who's definitely trying to marry off their daughter before Lent. And yet, there's a strange comfort in it. The fire crackles. The music floats. The cup is warm in your hand. For a few minutes, you forget about the frozen stores, the sick soldiers, the whispering cousins, the rats. You forget the cold. You almost feel content. But only almost. Because there's always drama beneath the table. Someone spills wine. A noble mutters something about your latest tax decree. A knight eyes his rival with the kind of look that ends in either a duel or a scandal. You sigh, quietly. You take another sip of sour wine, and you listen as the choir sings a hymn 2 verses too long. And finally, blessedly, the meal ends. You rise. Everyone rises. A prayer is said. Then everyone disappears. Some go to the solar, a warmer room, for games and conversation. Dice, chess, quiet gossip about your choice of tunic. Others go to their chambers, or to the stables, or to that one corridor that always smells like tallow and secrets. And you retreat to your private chamber. Your belly is full, your throat is dry, your mind is tired, but the hall still echoes behind you. Because in the end, meals in the medieval world weren't just about eating. They were about display, control, ritual, presence. And sometimes, if the wine was strong enough and the fire hot enough, they were about forgetting that outside your castle walls, winter still waits. The chill doesn't sleep. It prowls. It slinks through cracks in the stone walls under heavy doors around your hearth, between the rushes on the floor. And in its wake it leaves behind coughing, whispers, fevers. Because in the medieval world, even for a king, even for a queen, illness is always near. You feel it in your joints first. A little ache in the morning, a twitch behind the eye. You brush it off, stress, cold, age. But your physician is already watching. He's a man wrapped in too many layers with hands that tremble from too much mercury and not enough soap. His eyes are bloodshot. His breath smells faintly of garlic and pessimism. And he carries a bag full of hope. At least that's what he calls it. You call it what it is, medieval medicine. And it's terrifying. Because getting sick in this world is more than inconvenient. It's dangerous. It doesn't matter if you sit on a throne. Once disease enters your castle, it doesn't bow. Fevers are the most common. They come without warning. Red cheeks, glazed eyes, sweat soaking into your velvet pillow. Then the shivering begins. Then the coughing. Then the prayers. No antibiotics. No diagnosis. No guarantee of survival. And what does your physician offer? Not comfort. Not certainty. But rituals. He checks your humors, the sacred 4 blood phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. He holds a vial of your urine to the window and squints at it like it's fine wine. He charts the stars. He consults a book that's mostly drawings of toads. If your humors are out of balance, and somehow they always are, he recommends a solution. Bloodletting. Yes. With a knife, or leeches, or both. You lie still while a servant ties your arm. The blade nicks the skin. Blood trickles down into a ceramic bowl. Everyone watches, pretending this is helpful. Your head spins. You pray this doesn't kill you faster. And when that fails, he turns to herbs. Infusions of mugwort, decoctions of wormwood, dried sage stuffed in your ears, lavender water poured on your chest, onion slices tied to your feet, boiled willow bark pressed to your temples. Some of it helps, maybe. Most of it stinks. All of it is guesswork. If you're lucky, your body fights off the illness. You sweat through your gown. You sleep for days. You awaken with no memory and a damp pillow that could rival a pond. If you're unlucky, it gets worse, because sickness isn't private in a castle. It's contagious. Soon the servants fall ill. Then the steward. Then a lady-in-waiting collapses during vespers. And then the rumors begin. Someone whispers plague. Everyone remembers last time. The coughing, the boils, the bleeding gums, the carts full of bodies, the fires burning day and night, the sound of priests chanting over empty rooms. You send messengers. You cancel audiences. You order prayers, hundreds of them. You lock the chapel doors. You hang bundles of herbs over windows. You order no one to enter unless summoned. But disease doesn't follow orders. In the middle of the night, someone dies. Not a stranger, not a soldier, a cousin, a child, a friend. You sit in silence while the physician lists the symptoms. You already know them. You've seen them before. But he insists on explaining as if words will shield you. You don't sleep that night, or the next, because now death is real, and it wears the face of someone you loved. And here's the truth of it, no one is safe. Not the queen with her lace sleeves and gold-threaded hem. Not the king with his fox-fur mantle and jewel-studded crown. Not the youngest prince too small for the throne but just old enough to understand fear. And definitely not the servants. They vanish quietly. No ceremony, just silence. One day they're there. The next day, someone else brings the bread. And every death feels closer. So you turn to faith. Again. You order a mass said every hour. You light candles until the air is thick with wax and ash. You hold a relic to your chest and whisper to it, hoping it can hear you, or better yet, answer. You summon the bishop. He smells of incense and urgency. He blesses the chamber. He waves holy water in corners. He mutters prayers in Latin until his voice cracks. Still, someone else falls ill. And so you consider the other options. The folk healer in the village. The one the priest doesn't like. The one who carries herbs no one can name and whispers things to the moon. You send for her anyway. She comes cloaked in wool eyes, sharp hands worn. She doesn't bow. She doesn't bless. She kneels beside the bed, presses her hand to a fevered brow, leaves behind a bundle of herbs, a talisman made of bone and thread, and a warning, keep the window open, even when it's cold. You do because desperation outweighs dignity, and you wait. Some recover, some don't. You never know which one you'll be, and that more than anything is the terror of the medieval world. Uncertainty. Every cough might be your last, every fever a funeral, every night a gamble, and what's left behind a grave, dug shallow in frozen ground, marked with a stone and a whispered name, a royal yes. But bones don't remember titles, just the cold. So you survive. You wrap yourself tighter in wool and faith. You light another candle. You touch the crucifix beside your bed until your fingers cramp. And you listen. To the wind. To the fire. To your own breath still warm, still steady. And you whisper a prayer. Not for miracles, but for mourning. You are a king, or perhaps a queen. But tonight, you're not thinking about diplomacy, not about taxes, not even about that troubling cough your steward has developed. Tonight, you're thinking about family, a word that should bring comfort. But in the medieval world, it brings complexity. Let's begin with the queen. She is the lady of the castle in title, yes, but not always in freedom. She rises with the sun, or what little light filters through frozen horn windows. Her chambermaids dress her in layers of linen and wool, fastening tight bodices, smoothing embroidered veils, and brushing out hair that hasn't been washed in weeks, but must appear regal all the same. She does not rule, not officially, but she manages everything. The household, the servants, the supplies, the noble guests, the accounts, the tapestries, the meals, the children, especially the children. Because in a royal household, producing heirs isn't just a blessing, it's a contract, a job, a political obligation, and failure. Well, that's remembered more than success. Pregnancy for a medieval queen is a strange mixture of reverence and terror. She is pampered, yes, served warm milk tucked in fur-lined beds, sung prayers at bedtime. But she is also watched, constantly, like a chalice full of holy oil. Everyone notices what she eats, how often she vomits, whether her ankles swell, whether her face is pale. Every symptom is discussed, every mood analyzed. And when the labor comes, she is taken to a lying-in chamber, a dark, enclosed room sealed tight to keep out spirits, cold, and men, especially men. Only women are allowed in, midwives, nurses, servants with towels and boiled water, maybe a priest if things go badly. She screams. There's no shame in that. She bleeds. There's no stopping that. And if she survives, it's a miracle. If the baby survives, that's another. Many do not. Even queens wrapped in silks and prayers weep beside cradles that never rocked. And when the child lives, a new life begins. One of endless pressure. A prince must grow strong, must learn to ride by 7, read Latin by 10, lead men by 15, marry by 17, defend the border by 20. He must not stutter, must not limp, must not show fear, because one day he must wear the crown, even if he doesn't want it, even if it kills him. A princess has a different path. She is raised to be traded. A political bride. A noble gift wrapped in silk and Latin verses. She learns embroidery, music, modesty. She must speak just enough to be clever, but not enough to seem defiant. She watches her mother serve politely at feasts, watches how she lowers her eyes when the bishop speaks, watches how she smiles when courtiers insult her intelligence. She learns to perform long before she ever wears a gown worth noticing. And sometimes she marries before she has learned to bleed. Sometimes she is 12, her husband 37. That's not scandal, that's strategy. But even beyond royalty, family life is work. Brutal, unending work. The noblewoman, not a queen, but close enough, wakes before the sun to oversee the household. She organizes grain deliveries, distributes ale to the servants, manages wool inventories, and supervises laundry, all while breastfeeding, instructing her daughter in etiquette, and wondering if her husband will come back from the border this time with both ears. There is no leisure, only responsibility, and always the threat of childbirth. She has lost 2 already. One bled too long, the other never cried. She still dreams about them, but there's no time for mourning. Only more children to raise. They're everywhere, children. Running through halls, chasing dogs, picking crumbs off the floor. But childhood, as you know, it doesn't exist. Not here. Not now. A child is an adult in training, a tiny apprentice to suffering. At age 5, a boy might serve as a page to a knight, learning to hold a sword, half his weight. At 10, he's learning court manners, horseback posture, how to kill without flinching. Girls are given doll-like figures to teach them about motherhood. By 7, they're sewing. By 10, they're brewing herbal infusions. By 12, they're attending births. Children work. They carry water, clean rushes, stir stews, feed dogs, turn spits, fetch tools, hold candles in church until the wax burns their fingers. And when they get sick, you already know how that ends. So you love them, fiercely, quietly, with prayers stitched into every hem, with tokens tucked beneath their pillows, with whispered songs passed down by mothers who buried too many names. Family is fragile, so you protect it, even when it's cold, even when your daughter cries at night and you have no words that mean safe anymore. Even when your youngest son asks why the dogs bark at nothing, even when you're tired, so deeply, royally tired, you stay, because you must, because that's what medieval family is. Not love written in letters, but love shown in labor, holding feverish hands, staying through childbirth screams, kissing foreheads before sending them off to become knights, or queens, or corpses. You hold your family like a candle in the wind, and some nights it flickers. Some nights it doesn't last. But tonight it's still burning. You've made it past the morning, past the prayers, the cold, the tasteless meal and the endless petitions. But now comes the true trial of royalty people. The afternoon in a medieval castle is not quiet. It's not calm. It's a simmering pot of ambition, insult, desperation, and punishment stirred by rumor and served with a side of vengeance. Because ruling is not just about lands and laws, it's about balance. And your court, it's a dangerous game of thrones, without the dragons to make it interesting. First come the disputes. Two knights burst into the hall red-faced and sweating through their chainmail. One accuses the other of cheating in a hunting contest, of trespassing, of stealing a hawk. The other denies everything except the part about the hawk which he claims flew of its own free will. They demand justice, which means you must decide. You don't want to. You're tired. Your feet ache. Your fingers still smell like tallow from the morning's candle blessing. But kings and queens don't get to shrug. You call for the steward, for the records, for the falconer, for anyone who can say something vaguely useful. The knights glower. Their retainers whisper. Servants stop sweeping the rushes to eavesdrop. This is entertainment. This is politics. This is danger. Because a wrong decision here could cost you more than a hawk. It could cost loyalty. Troops, tribute. So you make your judgment. One man bows, the other leaves. Slowly, quietly. He's planning something. Probably petty. Possibly lethal. You make a mental note to watch him. Then comes a peasant woman. Somehow she made it past the guards. She falls to her knees before your chair. She weeps. She begs. Her husband was arrested for stealing bread. Not for himself, for their child. You glance at the guard. He shrugs. Rules are rules. And this is the rub. Mercy and order don't always agree. If you pardon him, others will steal too. If you punish him, that child starves. You stare at the woman. Her dress is threadbare, her face weathered. Her hands, raw and red, twitch as she clasps them. You feel the court watching, not with pity, but with calculation. What kind of monarch are you? You give the order, and you try not to look at her as she's led out. You'll think about her later, but right now you have a noblewoman accusing a chambermaid of theft. A black velvet hairpin gone from her coffer. The girl swears innocence. The noblewoman swears vengeance. You listen. You ask questions. You try to mediate. But you know how this ends. The noblewoman will win. She always does. The maid is dismissed. Not executed, not this time, but banished from service. She's 17. You give her a coin. Silently. Hoping it helps. Then it's time for the legal punishments. Because crime in your lands doesn't rest. And when justice is served, it's not quiet. You are led to the outer yard. The wind bites through your cloak. The crowd is gathered not because they must, but because they enjoy this part. Public justice. A thief stands on the platform, hands bound. A priest mutters prayers beside him. His head is bowed. You can smell his fear from here. His crime stealing a sheep. Your punishment. That depends on the mood of the crowd, on the local customs, on whether he's stolen before. Options include flogging, branding, the stocks, or worse. You glance at the crowd. They want blood. You weigh your choices. Justice isn't justice here. It's performance. So you sentence him to the stocks. Public humiliation. Let the town throw cabbage and curses. You walk away. The priest nods. The thief weeps. You do not look back. And still the day isn't over, because now you must deal with the land dispute between two neighboring lords. They've arrived with maps, deeds, witnesses. Each one quotes boundaries and rivers and grandfather's treaties. Each one threatens to withdraw troops, marriage's coin. You listen, you calculate, and you realize something. They don't care about the land. They care about each other. Old enemies. A feud so long it has its own family tree. You issue a ruling. You assign neutral inspectors. You make them shake hands. They do. Then they each leave separately, glaring over their shoulders. You suspect this isn't over. And finally, as the sun begins to set, the whispers begin. Not about criminals or landowners. About you. The Queen's cousin has been seen visiting the almoner again. The steward's daughter is pregnant. The bishop has been meeting with envoys from the north. Privately. And someone says your brother is gathering soldiers. Just in case, rumors. Every castle breathes them. They slip through stone like smoke. They fill the corners, the stairwells, the tapestries. You cannot stop them. You can only choose which ones to believe and which ones to bury. Because not all dangers carry swords. Some carry smiles, so you gather your inner circle. You speak in hushed tones. You plan. You watch. You are royalty. But you are also prey. Every alliance is a gamble. Every marriage a treaty. Every silence a weapon. This is the part no one tells you. Being a king or queen is not about ruling the people. It's about surviving the court. And today you survived. But tomorrow, that's never guaranteed. The last of the sunlight has vanished behind the battlements. A few embers flicker in the great hall. The servants scurry like ghosts, shadows moving with hushed urgency to shutter the windows, bank the fires, carry the chamber pots, and bar the doors. Because once the sun sets, the castle changes. You feel it in your bones. Not just the cold, though. Yes, it's colder now, as if the stone itself exhales frost, but something else. A weight, a stillness, a waiting. The dark in a medieval castle is not passive. It presses, it creaks, it listens. You return to your chamber trailing fabric and fatigue. Your feet are numb, your stomach still unsettled from supper. Your crown, finally removed, has left a dull ache on your brow. Your body is tired, but your mind still turning. You step into your bedchamber. The servants have drawn the bed curtains. They've lit a candle or two. The rushes have been stirred to cover the day's spills, but the scent of smoke wax and something faintly organic still clings to the air. The fire in the hearth crackles softly. You stare at it a little too long, because the fire means safety. It means warmth. It means life. And when it dies, you shake the thought away. You climb into bed not quickly, but methodically, one layer at a time. Woolen stockings off, linen nightshirt on. You slide beneath the heavy covers wool fur and something that smells faintly of sheep. The bed itself groans not loudly, but with the tired sigh of old wood and older craftsmanship. You draw the curtains shut, not for privacy, for insulation. Because even here, even in your royal bed, the cold finds you. The hearth glows behind the fabric. You can feel it just barely against your feet. But the rest of you, already shivering, you curl up. You tuck your hands between your knees. You pull the hood of your nightshirt over your ears, and you listen to everything. A rat scurries behind the wall. The wind wails through the tower slit. A shutter bangs loose somewhere near the chapel. A dog barks, then stops. And you wonder, was it something real or something else, because night is when the stories come back. The nursemaid's tales, the old midwife's warnings, the legends etched into the stone itself. Ghosts, demons, spirits, things that walk at night, things that wear familiar faces but speak with other voices. You've heard the tales, everyone has, about the noble who died in his sleep smiling, about the girl who vanished from the tower leaving behind only her shoes, about the shadow that moves faster than the torchlight in the west corridor. You tell yourself it's nonsense, but still, you never sleep with the fire out completely, and you never ever look too long at the mirror after dark. Someone once told you that a king's dreams are shaped by his sins. You have not slept well in years. Outside the castle moans. Yes, moans. Stone has a voice, and in winter it uses it. The walls groan with the temperature shifts. The beams creak as they contract. The old iron chains clank in the tower above. It sounds like breath, like someone pacing, like someone just outside your door. You reach for the small bell beside your bed, not to ring it, just to know it's there. Because if something comes for you tonight, be it fever or assassin or something older than both, you want to be able to call out. Even if no one comes in time. Because in this world, death has many faces. Some wear hoods, some wear crowns, some wear your brother's smile. Some come in the night without knocking. You've seen it happen. A knight goes to bed strong and healthy. In the morning, his body is cold, his lips blue, his eyes wide open. The physician says apoplexy. The priest says sin. The servant says poison. No one knows, but everyone remembers. So you lie awake. Not out of fear, no, you're too royal for fear, but out of awareness. You are mortal. No matter how high the dais, no matter how sharp the sword, no matter how many banners bear your name. Death walks these halls, and it doesn't knock for permission. It doesn't wait until morning. It could be sickness. It could be fire. Yes, fire. Another fear. The castle is dry. The tapestries flammable. The rushes soaked in fat and dust. One dropped candle. One spark. And everything becomes ash. You've seen it before. You've smelled it before. Charred stone. Boiled skin. Cracked beams. You still dream of it. So each night the servants bank the fire with sand. The candles are extinguished carefully. The draperies are drawn up. The guards double their rounds. You lock your chamber door from the inside. And you pray. Not just for life, but for rest. Real rest. Sleep that isn't haunted by war or famine or betrayal. Sleep that feels like more than just waiting. You whisper the old prayer. From sudden death, O Lord, deliver us. From the fire, without warning. From the night that never ends. And then finally, slowly, your eyes begin to close. Because no matter the fear, no matter the shadows that stretch across your stone walls, you are still human. And humans must sleep. Even in castles, even in winter, even with the wolves howling just beyond the walls, you fall asleep wondering, will you wake or will the cold take you in your dreams? You're still lying there beneath scratchy wool blankets, curled in the cocoon of fur and linen. Outside the castle is finally still. No footsteps in the corridors. No creaking of carts. No muttering courtiers plotting over wine. just silence. The kind of silence that only comes after exhaustion, after the weight of duty, of hunger, of bone-deep cold. The fire is now embers, soft red pulsing like a quiet heart in the corner of the room. You're not afraid anymore. You're just still. Because you've seen everything this world could throw at you. You woke in a bed of straw and stone. You washed with ice water and chewed stale bread. You wore wool until it itched your name into your skin. You ruled with a weary hand and a wary heart. You prayed, punished, listened, forgave. You feared death, and worse, you understood it. And through it all, you carried the burden of being royal. A crown is heavy, yes, but not as heavy as silence, not as heavy as decision, not as heavy as knowing that your comfort comes at the cost of someone else's firewood. And still you endured. Through aching joints and biting winds you kept moving. Through feasts that never satisfied and whispers that never stopped you kept ruling. Through sickness that lingered in the air like smoke and fear that nested in every crevice of the castle's bones you kept breathing. And that's the story. That's what life in a medieval castle was. Not magic, not splendor, not golden goblets and fairy tale crowns, but survival. Survival with style, maybe, with embroidery and fur trim, but survival all the same. So now, in this final moment, just you and the embers and the wind scratching at the tower stones, you can let it go. You don't have to count the sacks of grain anymore. You don't have to worry about the guard who's fallen asleep at the gate. You don't have to choose between mercy and order. You don't have to listen to anyone plotting anything, not tonight. You're safe now. Not because the castle is safe, but because this story is ending. And you get to leave it. You don't have to sleep with one eye open anymore. You don't have to pull a scratchy wool cap over your ears. You don't have to lie awake listening for footsteps you hope you don't recognize. You're here, in a soft bed, in a warm room, in a world with thermostats and running water and pillows that don't bite. And best of all, you're not royalty, not a king, not a queen, just someone listening, letting go, closing your eyes in the quiet. There are no duties here, no bells ringing before dawn, no scrolls demanding signatures, no icy wind howling through arrow slits. Just sleep. And the memory of a life lived centuries ago, hard, sharp, cold, but still human. They made it through their winters with little more than prayer salt and stubbornness. You don't have to. Tonight, you get warmth. You get peace. You get silence that doesn't whisper danger. So breathe out. Let the castle fade. Let the stone crumble into mist. Let the tapestries loosen their threads and drift into nothing. You're not there anymore. You're here, safe, warm, still. And the next time someone mentions a medieval castle, you'll remember the frost, the fire, the silence. But mostly you'll remember that you're not there now. You're here. Now rest, sleep deep, and remember, you don't have to wake up in the Middle Ages. Sleep well.